Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 on Monday, the 19th of August. My name is Brian Liddy, and just a brief apology for the late start to tonight's show. But we're going straight into Ukraine update. Today is the 908th day of the war in Ukraine. Ukraine has destroyed a third bridge over the Siem River in the Kursk region as part of an apparent attempt to expand what President Volodymyr Zelensky has described as a military buffer zone inside Russia. According to Russian officials, the bridge in the village of Kariz was damaged overnight by targeted Ukrainian shelling. It was the last major crossing on this part of the front, following the destruction on Friday and Saturday of two bridges further east over the same river. President Zelensky has said Ukraine's military incursion into Russia's Kursk region aims to create a buffer zone to prevent further attacks by Moscow across the border. It marked the first time the Ukrainian president had clearly stated the aim of the operation, which was launched on the 6th of August. Previously, he had suggested it aimed to protect communities in the bordering Sumy region from constant shelling. Ukraine has captured more than 150 Russian prisoners of war on some days in the cross-border military operation in Kursk, according to Oleksiy Drodzenko, the head of the military administration in the Ukrainian city of Sumy. The Institute for the Study of War has observed claims that Ukraine's operation in Kursk has advanced through 800 square kilometres over 6 days. The initial incursion attacked largely unprepared, unequipped and unmanned Russian defensive positions along the border. The ISW said in its daily report on the conflict, adding that Ukraine has continued to make rapid advances in Kursk following the deployment of Russian reinforcements to the area. Russian forces took control of the village of Sivdronica in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. On Sunday, Russia denied a report that Ukraine's attack on the Kursk region had derailed indirect talks with Kyiv on halting strikes on energy and power targets, saying there had been no talks ongoing. Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku, on Sunday for a two-day state visit. Russian television broadcast images of the Russian president's plane as it arrived in Baku in the evening. And now the latest from Israel and Gaza conflict. At least 40,139 Palestinians have been killed and 92,743 have been injured in Gaza since the 7th of October, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. The Israeli army said Monday that one of the soldiers was killed in the country's north, where cross-border fire with Lebanese militant group Hezbollah has soared during the 10-month Gaza war. Benjamin Netanyahu's 3-hour meeting with Antony Blinken was positive and conducted in a good spirit, according to a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Blinken said in Tel Aviv, "Now is probably the best, maybe the last opportunity to get the hostages home and to get a ceasefire." Lebanese group Hezbollah said on Monday that 2 of its fighters were killed and claimed attacks on northern Israel, including some with drones, in the latest cross-border violence amid fears of full-blown war. The armed wings of Hamas and Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility on Monday for a bomb blast near a synagogue in Tel Aviv that Israeli police and the Shin Bet intelligence agency described as a terrorist attack. Israel is flagrantly and regularly committing war crimes in Gaza, according to Mark Smith, a former UK diplomat who recently resigned over ministers' failure to ban arms sales to Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Claims of Palestinians being tortured, left untreated in hospital, and unable to escape constant bombardment have been submitted to the High Court in London by lawyers seeking an order preventing the UK government continuing to grant arms export licences to UK companies selling arms in Israel. The witness statements, covering more than 100 pages, come from Palestinian and Western medical doctors working in Gaza's hospitals, as well as from ambulance drivers, civil defence department workers and aid workers. The graphic evidence is designed to support a request for a court order that the UK government has asked irrationally in refusing to ban the sale of arms, arguing there was not a clear risk the weapons would be used to commit breaches of international humanitarian law. This is the statutory test for the government to decide whether to grant arms export licences. The Labour government is reviewing the policy. The judicial review is due to be held between the 8th and the 10th of October. The case has been brought by an alliance of NGOs, including Al-Haq, Global Legal Action Network, otherwise known as GLAN, Amnesty International, Oxfam, and Human Rights Watch. It is the first attempt to put such graphic testimony of alleged Israeli war crimes in front of a UK judge since the 7th of October. The previous Conservative administration defended its decision to continue to grant licences, saying there was insufficient risk that UK weapons were being used in war crimes. Following his meeting with the Israeli UK Deputy Ambassador, External Affairs Secretary Angus Robertson issued a further statement today. The statement said, 2 weeks ago, I met the new Israeli UK Deputy Ambassador at their request. We anticipated the Deputy Ambassador would raise concerns about anti-Semitism as well as other issues. It was right for me to decide whether to take the meeting. However, as is normal practice, the First Minister was made aware before the meeting happened. My view was that given the Israeli UK Deputy Ambassador had requested a meeting, it was an opportunity to express the Scottish Government's clear and unwavering position on the need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, and I did exactly that. No one intended that this meeting be presented as a legitimising the actions of the Israeli government in Gaza. The Scottish Government has been consistent in our unequivocal condemnation of the atrocities we have witnessed in Gaza. The reality, however, is that this meeting has been taken by many to represent a normalisation of relations between the Israeli and Scottish governments. As such, it is clear that it would have been better to ensure that the meeting was strictly limited to the need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and an end to the appalling loss of life in the region. I apologise for the fact that this did not happen. Going forward, it is clear that, having now spoken directly to the Israeli government and making them aware of our position on an immediate ceasefire, it would not be appropriate to accept any further invitation for a further meeting. This will remain our position until such time as real progress has been made towards peace. Unimpeded access to humanitarian access is provided, and Israel cooperates fully with its international obligations on the investigation of genocide and war crimes. The Scottish Government does not support any normalisation of its relations with the Israeli Government during this period. The Scottish Government will never hold back in expressing support for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all hostages, an end to UK arms being sent to Israel, and the recognition of a sovereign Palestinian state within a two-state solution. Creative Scotland has announced its decision to close the open fund for individual artists to name new applications, blaming the Scottish Government for not agreeing to the release of £6.6 million in grant and aid budget in the current financial year of 2024-25. Creative Scotland say that the fund will close to new applications from 2 p.m. on Friday, the 30th of August 2024. Creative Scotland says it does not have enough funds available to support all the funding routes that they currently provide. All currently submitted open funds for individual applications will be processed as per the published guidance. The National Lottery Open Fund for organisations remains open. The Scottish Government has put all non-essential public spending on hold following the announcement of public service funding cuts by the UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who said she had discovered there was a £22 billion in-year deficit in the UK finances. This has created uncertainty in the level of funding that the Scottish Government will receive through Barnett Consequentials. Ian Munro, CEO of Creative Scotland, said the level of uncertainty regarding the provision of grant and aid budgets from the Scottish Government is creating critical problems for the ongoing support we can provide to Scotland's culture sector. The Open Fund for Individuals is one of Creative Scotland's key funding programmes, supporting a wide range of activity initiated by artists, writers, producers and other creative practitioners in Scotland. He went on to say that following the announcement, many well-known Scottish artists have taken to social media to express their anger at the Creative Scotland announcement. Energy bills across the UK could rise by 9% from October to an average of £1,714 a year for the typical household's gas and electricity, according to forecasts. Analysts at Cornwall Insight, a well-respected energy consultancy, have forecast that the government's energy price cap will rise for the average dual-fuel energy bill, up from its current level of £1,568. The energy regulator Ofgem is expected to set out the next price cap for October until the end of December by Friday. If the analysts' predictions are correct, the price cap would be £121 lower than the energy costs last winter, when the cap was set at £1,835 a year for gas and electricity in a rise in global energy prices because of Russia's war in Ukraine. However, winter energy bills will remain well above the levels paid before Russia's invasion triggered a global energy market shock, when the price cap was set at £1,216 for the winter of 2021. Campaigners have also warned that higher bills this winter will take a greater toll on households which have built up debts to their supplier after years of rising prices. Energy debt has reached a record high of over £3 billion, according to official figures. The UK government's decision to means test the winter fuels allowance is expected to see an increase in pensioner fuel poverty, as many pensioners across the UK who do not claim pension credit will no longer qualify for the payment. The number of asylum seekers who have died in the care of the Home Office has more than doubled in the last year, according to media reports today. While some deaths were a result of illness or old age, others are thought to have happened as a result of suicide. Charities fear that the treatment of asylum seekers in the UK has adversely affected the health of an already vulnerable group of people. Many have fled persecution in their home countries, where some experience rape and torture or abuse by traffickers on their journey in search of safety. The data relates to the period January to June 2024, in which 20 people died, including 2 babies, one from Pakistan and another from Afghanistan, and a 15-year-old boy from Iraq. Figures obtained by the NGO of Civil Fleet show that for the same period in 2023, there were 13 deaths. Enver Solomon, the chief executive of the Refugee Council, said, "The fact that there has been a sharp rise in the deaths of people in asylum accommodation is deeply troubling." The Home Office does not publish information about deaths of asylum seekers in their care, and it can be difficult to obtain this information through freedom of information requests. The data for the first 6 months of 2024 does not provide detail of deaths beyond saying that the cause of some is unconfirmed. But the 2023 data provides more detail, showing that some lives were cut short as a result of brutal circumstances. One person died as a result of a hit-and-run incident, while another was forced to jump from a window of his room, which caught fire after the lithium battery on his e-bike exploded. According to longer-term data, there has been a sharp increase in deaths in the Home Office accommodation since 2020, with a doubling in suicides. Between April 2016 and June 2024, there were 217 deaths, with just 28 of those between April 2016 and December 2019, while between January 2020 and June 2024, there were 189 deaths. 87% of the total number during the whole period. The increase in deaths coincides with a change by the Home Office from accommodating almost all asylum seekers in shared housing to moving tens of thousands into long-term hotel accommodation at the start of the pandemic. Emmanuel Macron will meet with French party and parliamentary leaders this week for negotiations to break the political deadlock over who should form a new government. France has been led by a caretaker administration since the July general election failed to leave any party with a working majority in the National Assembly. After Macron's centrist government resigned, the Olympics offered the president a brief window to put domestic politics on hold for what he called a truce. But more than a week after the Games closed, critics have accused him of playing for time. He will hold what presidential aides have described as a series of exchanges on Friday to end the stalemate. The appointment of a Prime Minister will follow on from these consultations and their conclusions, the Élysée Palace said, adding that the French people had expressed a wish for change and broad unity. It said the President hoped to continue to move towards a constitution of the broadest and most stable majority possible in the service of the country. The New Popular Front, or the MFP, centrist and left-wing alliance, saw off the threat of a far-right national rally, or RN, in the second round of the July legislative election, which left the lower house of Parliament divided into three roughly equal blocs. NFP has put forward Lucie Castex, a 37-year-old economist and Director of Financial Services at Paris City Hall, as its choice for Prime Minister. Macron, who as president has the right to appoint a government leader, has agreed she should be present for the discussions, but has already ruled her out of the post. The question is not a name, the question is what majority can emerge in the Assembly, he said. Several names have emerged as possible candidates, including the right-wing Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier, the former minister Xavier Bertrand, also from the right, and former Socialist Prime Minister Bernard Cazeneuve. Macron has been counting on riding a feel-good wave following the success of the Paris Games, after a 1st of August poll suggested that his popularity and that of the caretaker Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, had risen by 2 percentage points. Macron is under pressure to appoint a new Prime Minister before the opening of the Paralympic Games on the 28th of August. President Biden will take centre stage for perhaps the last time tonight when he addresses the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Tens of thousands of protesters are expected to converge in the host city to demand that the US end military aid to Israel for its ongoing war in Gaza. Activists are calling for Vice President Kamala Harris to change course. On the conventional stage, speakers will range from Hillary Clinton, a former Secretary of State who backs Biden's Gaza policy, to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a progressive star who has criticised the administration and called for a ceasefire. The speaking lineup also includes Senators Chris Coons of Delaware and Raphael Warnock of Georgia, Representatives Jamie Raskin of Maryland and Jasmine Crockett of Texas, Andy Beshear, the government of Kentucky, Sean Fain, president of the UAW union, and women that have been subject to cruel and dangerous abortion bans under Donald Trump. Just over a month ago, Biden had been expecting to give Thursday's closing speech as he accepted the Democratic nomination for 2024. But his withdrawal from the race last month and the party's consolidation around Harris means that Biden will speak on opening before setting off on holiday. In his speech, the president is expected to focus on a familiar theme, the defence of democracy against Donald Trump, as he recommends Harris as the ideal successor. The convention will draw an estimated 50,000 people to America's third biggest city, including delegates, activists and journalists. Security will be tight, with street closures around the convention centre, while police have undergone de-escalation training. This evening, the convention will focus on Biden's administration's policy accomplishments. Tuesday will contrast Trump's and Harris's visions for America. Wednesday will emphasise the importance of protecting individual freedoms. Thursday is entitled For Our Future, underlined by Harris's keynote speech. The Scottish Government has introduced new initiatives to increase access to residential rehabilitation across Scotland, which will be to support more than 100 residential rehab placements. Local alcohol and drug partnerships, or ADPs, that are experiencing high demand will be able to access extra funding from the new £2 million Scottish Government Residential Rehabilitation Additional Placement Fund, or APF. In addition, A national online service directory will also provide an up-to-date nationwide list of residential rehabilitation providers for the first time. Drugs and Alcohol Policy Minister Christina McKelvey said, a recent PHS publication found we are on track to meet our commitments of 1,000 people receiving public funding for residential rehab, but we want to do more, and we are working hard to remove potential barriers to people accessing it. The working in ADPs have helped design this approach, which complements a range of other residential rehabilitation projects supported by the Scottish Government. The online directory of providers will also make it easier for people to access placements. The Scottish Government are holding a consultation on fisheries management measures which could be introduced for 20 sites in Scotland's offshore waters that are designated as Marine Protected Areas or MPAs, fulfilling a long-standing commitment to ensure protection from MPAs. The consultation proposes either zoned or full restrictions on the use of specified types of fishing equipment, demersal mobile and static gear at 15 sites. For the remaining 5 sites, the consultation proposes a full site-wide exclusion of specified gear types where this is the only suitable option to achieve conservation objectives. Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero and Energy Gillian Martin said, Scotland has beautiful and diverse marine ecosystems. However, the twin biodiversity and climate crises mean we must act now to support the recovery and resilience of our marine environment and the sustainability of the communities and industries that rely on it. Marine protected areas already provide focused protection for the species and habitats in our waters. By implementing proposed fisheries management measures, we can further guard against further biodiversity loss, help to restore high priority marine features, and make a greater contribution to supporting and maintaining the marine ecosystem, which in turn supports our long-term food security. She went on to say, this will help ensure our seas remain a source of prosperity for the nation, especially in our coastal and island communities. These proposals are the result of many years of development, and we will continue to consult very closely with industries and coastal communities to hear their views. The Scottish MPA network now extends across more than 230 sites for nature conservation and covers 37% of Scotland's seas. Each individual MPA has specific conservation objectives for the features the site is designated to protect, which range from deep-sea sponge aggregations to ocean quahog, a thick-shelled clam which can live for more than 400 years and cold water coral reefs. The consultation will run until the 14th of October. Scotland's new strategy to support refugees and people seeking asylum with settling into their community has been celebrated at the University of Glasgow today. The new Scots Refugee Integration Strategy, Delivery Plan 2024 to 2026, which is the most comprehensive of its kind worldwide, seeks to ensure people understand their rights, responsibilities and entitlements, and to help new Scots and communities to integrate. Developed by the Scottish Government, Scottish Refugee Council and COSLA, the plan includes commitments to work with employers to help them recruit refugees, to identify ways to improve English language provision, and to ensure services are coordinated effectively. Scotland's Minister for Equalities, Colcab Stewart, MSP, is attending the event, together with senior politicians, policymakers and those with lived experience of forced migration. Musical and creative performances will reflect the richness of culture that asylum seekers and refugees bring to Scottish society, together with speakers and panel discussions. The celebration takes place at the University of Glasgow, is set to announce its deepening commitment to supporting refugee and asylum seekers as a University of Sanctuary. This will include increasing the number of sanctuary scholarships from 20 to 30 places from the beginning of the 2025-26 academic year. The Sanctuary Scholarship Scheme is available to applicants seeking sanctuary in the UK for humanitarian reasons. In addition, this year the university will introduce a scholarship in memory of former student Dima Alhaj, who was killed in the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. UNESCO Chair for Refugee Integration through Education, Languages, Arts at the University of Glasgow and the New Scots Core Group Chair, Professor Alison Phipps, said, "Now, more than ever, in this divisive and troubling time, it is increasingly important that we come together to show a warm welcome to the people who are seeking asylum in Scotland. Refugee rights are human rights, and those seeking safety are trying to escape unimaginable horrors that have destroyed their way of life. I am proud to have been a part of delivering this refugee integration strategy, which represents deeply researched, evidence-based work with people seeking asylum and offers an exciting commitment to action across Scotland and to embed the rights of all who seek refuge." Well, that is it for this evening, but before we go, I just want to remind you that here at Broadcasting Scotland, we still depend on the generosity of our supporters. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please do consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. To everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Right now, we urgently need to increase our donation if we are to be able to pay our bills. We face costs of over £4,000 every month, but our income is just over £2,000 a month, and we are now facing mounting debts. So please donate whatever you can afford. But thank you, and once again, goodbye, and thank you for watching.